Thoughtseize Tarmogoyf players. Reid Duke has been a big proponent of very light splashing and often no splashing. Here he's technically on Obzon this weekend, but it's a very light commitment. Only 2 copies of Lingering Souls is it for white cards.
Yeah, and the big reason that you're seeing this is we kind of talked about how important answering the Ironworks cards are during our pregame show, and we see 4 copies of Stony Silence hiding out on the board, and if you're splashing white for your sideboard cards anyway, just having this great grinding tool in Lingering Souls is going to get you a lot of free points.
Now, Robert Lee is on the play here for game number 1. He has taken a mulligan to 6, but will come out with something like Birds of Paradise. Now, these black-green mid-range decks, so Obzon, Jund, Golgari, how do you generally like them against your company, your creature decks, things like spirits and humans?
So Lingering Souls is going to get you a lot of points here just because it gives you something that you can do, and it gives you time, which is a big, big deal, because eventually the whole point of these green-black decks is they just want to take over with their Tarmogoyf, with their Lilianas, etc. And having those tools that make sure you don't just get got by a couple of flyers that can fly past a Tarmogoyf or a Scavenging Ooze is going to get Duke some serious points.
Now Reid, not going to let his opponent untap with that Birds of Paradise, uses Fatal Push on it.
And I want to take a second to just look at this Birds of Paradise out of the Banned Spirits deck. There are a lot of dorks in Robert's deck here, and I think that's a great way to actually get to cheat a bunch of extra 3-drops into your deck, which makes your collected companies more powerful as well.
So looking at the 4 Noble Hierarch and the 3 Birds of Paradise.
And we see extra copies of Geist of St. Traft in the list as well. So this is kind of a spot where normally Collected Company is already a great card in the matchup just because it effectively lets you get 2 cards out of 1 card, and it also lets you get out on the table. But the cards he's going to hit on average are going to be more powerful as a result of these 3s.
Yeah, well, it's right. So 3 Birds of Paradise is actually more than your stock Bant Spirits list plays.
Exactly. Normally you just see 4 Noble Hierarchs, maybe a Birds of Paradise here or there, but it looks like that he's choosing to play them over Aether Vials in this list, which is an interesting take, but it makes your companies much better.
Now, I do want to go over some exchange here. Robert played a turn 2 Selfless Spirit, and Reid kept pace. It was a copy of Abrupt Decay, so 2 creatures from Robert, 2 removal spells from Reid, and Reid now getting the spot where he wants to be. Robert is a player who stumbles first. His turn 3 does not have a 3rd land. It's just Mausoleum Wanderer, and now looks like Reid's going to take advantage of the situation.
And that's kind of the upside and downside of these mana dorks, is you're going to see a lot more creatures.
And black, green was a mana cost for Liliana. On Robert's side, I'm sure he was hoping it was Liliana of the Veil, but it was not. It's Liliana of the Last Hope, which on a board like this is a powerhouse.
Right, and the big draw to even having Liliana Last Hope in your deck is sometimes she is just lights out for these small ball creature draws where you have all these X1s and she's just going to kind of machine gun them down one at a time.
Yeah, I remember that even from Standard, Liliana Last Hope, just a perfect answer to cards like Selfless Spirit.
Yep, exactly. Selfless Spirit. All the things that we've seen this game are basically all of the cards that Lee needed to not see against this Last Hope.
Well, we'll see what Lee has left over. Inquisition of Kozilek shows another Mausoleum Wanderer, Reflector Mage, Spell Queller, and Collected Company. I see Robert the only thing he could cast that turn was that Mausoleum Wanderer, but into a Liliana there wasn't even a point.
Exactly. Kind of the hope here, for Lee at least, is that you draw another 1-drop creature and kind of go, all right, one of these is going to die, but that means I get to untap with one of them.
Spell Queller is gone.
Fairly intuitive take. It's the only one that he could flash in on the end step to attack this Liliana.
Dark Confidant out for Reid. With a land, Robert can use Reflector Mage on it. If not, though, Reid will start getting extra cards, and Robert's draw for the turn, a copy of Supreme Phantom.
That's actually a pretty okay pickup here, just because Liliana isn't for sure going to wipe it out, and it can even protect the Mausoleum Wanderer from Lilianas later on.
And Reid's going to continue to develop here. We'll net at least 1 extra card off that Dark Confidant. What looks to be more.
This is kind of getting rough for Robert because there's sort of a point of no return with these green-black decks where if you just hit enough cards, you'll be so far ahead with all kinds of 1-for-1s and removal spells that even if you have these powerful cards, you're just not going to be able to catch back up.
Yeah, I saw there. A pickup of Dark Confidant was Treetop Village. That's his 5th land. Draw for the turn was Scavenging Ooze, but it looks like Reid has other thoughts here. To the front of his hand, he's moved a copy of Liliana of the Veil, so 2 Lilianas could be in play. And that's going to be exactly it. A -2, and Robert has to sacrifice that Supreme Phantom. No land, and he will then pick up the cards.
Yeah, there's kind of a point where you're staring down 2 Planeswalkers and a Dark Confidant who's almost a Planeswalker himself, and you don't get to play anything. Why would you keep playing?
Yeah, it felt like with a land drop that turn, he could play to a 4th land and a great Collected Company, but missing it there's not really any coming back.
Exactly. Robert's best draws there were things that could help him put Geist of St. Traft into play just because it's so good at shooting down Planeswalkers.
Yeah, and I did want to mention that as we look at their sideboards. With Robert's build being so heavy on Geist of St. Traft with 3 copies in the main, this is a matchup where I expect that to be pretty reasonable.
Yeah, so you can't use your typical removal spells, and also choosing to have these Birds of Paradise over Aether Vials means that Robert's Geist is more insulated from Edict effects like Liliana of the Veil than we normally would expect.
Right, yeah, Liliana is generally the way that Abzan would answer that kind of card, so or with a blocker.
Right.
So looking at the sideboards, both players, I mean, if you want to talk about how the effect that Krark Clan Ironworks is having on the metagame, let's look at the beginning of their sideboards.
Oh, yes. 7 total copies of the same hate card.
Yeah, 7 Stony Silences in the sideboards. So neither player is going to use them for this matchup. Reid Duke also paying some mind to it, some resurgence there of Amulet, 3 copies of Fulminator Mage.
Big fan of seeing that one there, and he's even giving a nod to it in his main deck with Liliana Last Hope. I don't know if you've got to bring back a Fulminator Mage with that minus in a matchup where it's good.
Right. It's yeah, it's the second Fulminator that is the one that's hard to beat out of those decks.
Oh yeah, exactly. The first one you're just like, yeah, I mean, I was planning on playing some lands anyway, but the second one, the third one, that's when you're kind of going, wow,
I'm out of lands. This Tarmogoyf's starting to hit me a lot.
Exactly.
Now, Reid does have extra removal. 2 Collective Brutality, 2 Path to Exile. He has 2 Nile Spellbomb, a Grafdigger's Cage, and I like this 1 sideboard copy of Choke. Maybe not for this matchup, but I do want to look toward the removal spells and perhaps the Grafdigger's Cage as to whether they would play here.
I agree, and this is going to be sort of a play-draw dependent thing where I like the Collective Brutalities when Reid is on the play, but I don't like them as much when he's on the draw, just because you don't really get a chance to tag one of the Mana Dorks when it would be relevant. The best possible brutality is general discard, hit a dork, hit a Collected Company, go about your business. But in this case, Robert's going to get to play a 3 before Reid can cast Brutality. But Path and Cage are 2 things that are actually pretty interesting here just because they shut off some of Robert's more powerful tools.
Yeah. Now, on Robert's side, normally this is where I'd see a Bant Spirits player board into Geist of St. Traft, but for this situation, these are actually all in his main deck, which makes this sideboard a bit interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to probably see Thalia, Guardian of Thraben here. You know, the nice thing about Thalia is even though it is not shutting Reid down, it is slowing him down, which is basically what Robert needs to happen, right? Your cards are not necessarily going to go long as well as all of Reid's Planeswalkers, so you just kind of need to close the door before Duke gets to build up, and Thalia is one of the pieces in that puzzle.
So do you want it over something like Selfless Spirit, or what are you looking at cutting?
So here are the things that I'm just not super happy with. I don't really like Phantasmal Image because you have to have another creature in play in order for it to be good. It dies to everything, obviously, but if you don't have 2 or 3 creatures in play, you might just get got when you go to cast this image. Reid kills the thing you were planning to copy, and then all of a sudden your image doesn't have a creature to clone. That ends up looking pretty embarrassing. He might consider taking out a copy or 2 of these Mana Dorks in order to make his average top deck more powerful.
Yeah.
And it's also possible he's just not as high on some of his creature removal since Duke just has a couple of very important creatures that you need to answer, these Dark Confidant and the Scavenging Ooze, but otherwise you can try to just fly around a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, the Birds of Paradise, it's interesting to talk about boarding that out because against Abzan, I do see the reason why you'd want to board them out. At the same time, we talked about how Geist of St. Traft is one of the best things Robert can be doing, and so there's this push-pull with those cards where he really wants one of them on turn 1 and then wants to not draw a second one.
Exactly. You want to draw exactly 1 copy of them, and redundant copies are actively bad.
All right. Getting ready for Game 2. Now at StarCityGames.com, if you want to get the latest on Modern and other strategy, we have our Star City Games newsletter. This is Magic Gathering news, gives you highlights from the week's articles, lets you know when the SCG Tour is coming near you, finds invitational qualifiers and game nights, and also it's free. You can sign up today at StarCityGames.com/newsletter.
Big fan of the newsletter. It's like free articles every week.
Robert has kept on 7. It's Reid now contemplating his first hand.
Robert giving him the stare down. Love it.
There you go.
Got to give credit to someone who, while Reid Duke is deciding a mulligan, you just stare into his soul. I couldn't do it.
You got to get him on tilt, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Keep. Do it. You won't.
And a 1-drop from Robert is Mausoleum Wanderer.
You know Reid kept because he was intimidated.
Yeah, it just didn't. This guy's real confident. Just don't know if this hand's going to be good enough.
I like the power plays. That's what I play Magic for.
Last game, Robert was never able to untap with a creature for the entirety of the game. We'll see if he can do one better this time.
I'm confident that he can. This is kind of the start that you really want because it lets you protect your cards from Inquisition of Kozilek or just force the Fatal Push.
So with a card like Thoughtseize, are you interested in countering?
So a lot of times it depends on what the texture of your hand is looking like, but at the rate that Lee kept his hand, I'm under the impression that there's something like a Collected Company, a Geist of St. Traff that Robert would rather have than this Mausoleum Wanderer.
Yeah, and Robert agrees, happy to trade that away. That's the kind of situation, if you're willing to trade your Wanderer with a Thoughtseize or an Inquisition, then you kind of expect this to play out nearly every game.
Exactly.
And we do get a look at Robert's hand, and we see why he wanted to protect it from a Thoughtseize. His hand is 3 more lands, a Spell Queller, and a Collected Company. Now, Inquisition from Reid can only take the Spell Queller, so Robert's left with 3 lands and a Company.
And it looks like Reid Duke has a copy of Collective Brutality hiding out in his hand just to mop up that Company.
Yeah, it's going to happen one turn earlier than Robert's going to be able to cast it.
So what you're saying is
it'll
right
work.
On time.
Yep.
Right on time.
Well, maybe. Look at the pass from Reid. Now we see why Reid is tanked so on that hand. He doesn't have a second land.
Oh. And I think, we can double check here in a second, but it looks like Robert picked up another copy of Collected Company.
Well, we will. Reid did hit the second land here on turn 3. So I think we're going to see that Collective Brutality. Reid's hoping that he'll leave his opponent without any plays.
Oh, yeah. That's the kind of thing where you Inquisition your opponent, and then you get this effective Thoughtseize, and you're kind of just hoping, all right, please just brick. Brick like once. Brick one time. Come on now. Come on now. But unfortunately, we also know how hand destruction cards work. You can't Thoughtseize the top of their deck.
Here is Collective Brutality. And you're right, it's 2 copies of Collected Company. That was Robert's draw from the turn. And you got to think there's a, kind of a sigh there for Reid seeing that was the pickup. Yeah. Now he's hoping that this Company will miss.
We have a game on our hands.
Yeah. I would think from Robert's side that this Company does need to hit something reasonable. I mean, Reid kept a 1-land hand on the draw. It's probably not just because it has an Inquisition and a Thoughtseize in it.
Exactly, and this is the point where you're really hoping your Collected Company is going to set something up like Thalia, since we know Duke is choked on lands, and then a Geist of St. Traff to just slam the door shut.
Robert going to pass. If you're trying to get to something like Thalia, did you want to main phase the Company here?
So here, it depends a lot on what Robert drew, but if you don't really mind Reid, say, here on 2, you're expecting these Abzan decks, or these green-black decks, at least from Robert's perspective, to kind of lead on one of their 2-drop creatures. You don't really want to main phase it because you're opening it up to some removal and giving Duke information to operate with.
And that's exactly what happened. Reid played Dark Confidant. Yeah, I guess the other side is that Liliana would be possible. If you hit Thalia, you're turning off Lilianas.
So the trade side, the opposite side of that is if you hit Thalia and another card, you just kill Liliana.
Okay, so
and that's kind of like shutting
you can already
it off,
answer
but better.
Liliana.
Yeah. Sure, maybe Duke effectively gains a couple life because you take out a Planeswalker, but you just take one of his best cards away for free in that case.
Looks like we have a pass here.
Robert may be tanking with his Dark Confidant on the stack since Spell Queller could eat it.
If he wants to do it with it on the stack, yeah. And we'll see Collected Company. There is a Spell Queller available. See if that's the card. Top 6, Robert can choose 2 creatures to put them into play. It is Spell Queller and Thalia.
That's how we do it.
And
That's how we do it.
That's with the Dark Confidant on the stack. So now we'll see who does Well, no, I was going to say
doesn't have
if he
anything.
doesn't have anything, he can't have a fatal push here.
Slaughter Pact, I guess, is
Yeah.
kind of what we're looking at.
Accidental bump of the top card there. And it looks like they will play on. Supreme Phantom, the play from Robert, pumps both. Rather, pumps Spell Queller up to 3. It's a swing for 5 and Reid down to 11. Board getting mighty cluttered here.
This is a real clock.
Yeah, now I was looking for something like Damnation. Sometimes we can see that in an Obzon list, but I don't believe Reid has any sweepers today.
No, Reid's just trying to play some honest magic, which the nice thing is that means all of your cards play throughout every phase of the game, but it is a little bit harder to come back from these situations where you're just really far behind.
Well, looking at Reid's hand, he actually did have that fatal push last turn, so man, what damage that Thalia did.
Thalia's nice.
Yeah.
Thalia is nice. I wouldn't say I'm a Thalia fan, but she's a powerful card.
Yeah, generally they tend to mess with the decks I like playing.
Yeah, exactly. I want to cast a lot of spells and that be good enough. Here, Duke's just somewhat trying to figure out what pieces of the puzzle he needs to pull out first in order to get back into this game.
Yeah, Reid does pass here, and during Robert's upkeep, he's going to fetch. So Revolt is online this turn, which feels like it's going to matter here.
Yeah, you generally just want to be going for the Spell Queller because that gets you the Dark Confidant, which gets you more resources and so forth.
Yeah, tap land from Reid, which means it's one spell this turn. Yeah, just that fatal push. That will be the play. Can target Spell Queller. Reid gets back his Dark Confidant.
Could we get a flavor judge on this?
Whether you can push.
How do you push a spirit that flies? What happens?
Fatally. You fatally push
push
a
it.
spirit. Yeah. You kill it because it's a spirit.
Ooh, and you bounce it because it's a bob.
Yeah, Reflector Mage puts Dark Confidant back into Reid's hand, and attack for 3 sends him to 7.
This is big.
Yeah, how do you push a ghost is the question?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It feels like either your arms go through it or it doesn't fall.
Well, it doesn't lose flying, right? So it doesn't have to fall. It just has to, you have to poof it, right?
You gotta poof it.
Yeah. That's a lot of cleanup on Reid's side.
Bright side, Duke does know that he gets another turn after this. There isn't, outside of some collected company nonsense, he's not dying next turn.
Yeah.
Lee is actually kind of just doing a 5-color humans impression here.
Robert's empty-handed.
Exactly.
Reid will cast Scavenging Ooze, and that's actually a card, looking at this board, which could start to stabilize him. Robert's board is not, though it's 3 creatures, they're all playing very honest.
That's true, but one thing to look at here, and this is kind of why the Banned Spirits deck is so attractive to so many creature players, Robert is this far ahead against Abzan and has only cast 3 spells this game.
Yeah.
Robert has actually not done very much and is still kind of going toe-to-toe here.
3 mana, Drogskull Captain, not the draw Reid was hoping to see. An attack in for 2 sends him down to 5.
Nothing but respect for my captain.
It is Scavenging Ooze up to a 3/3. Reid gains a life, goes up to 6.
This is where it starts.
Yeah, I think there's some pressure on him to have a removal spell for this Drogskull Captain.
It looks like he has something.
Yeah, well, he has, I want to say 6 cards in hand, so he's got a lot of somethings, right? The question is if he can cast them. Thalia's just doing a number here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a point where even if you attack with both Captain and Wanderer last turn, next turn, Reid can just gain 2 life.
Right.
Like, that's not a very good turn from the Banned Spirits deck. Robert still kind of needs to draw some things here in order to get back in and seal the deal.
Duke has already gone through 2 copies of Fatal Push. playing the full 4. Which we'll see, I guess. In Jund builds, you don't always see 4 fatal pushes because of lightning bolts. Though
exactly.
in Golgari and Abzan, this is pretty normal.
Yeah, bolt's just so good at turning the corner. But here, you still just need those ways to kill creatures in the first turn or 2, and push is the best option. Other things are what? Disfigure, ulcerate,
Yeah. Ooh.
dismember. I don't know if you've dismembered a goblin guide, but it feels worse than it sounds.
Yeah,
that
sounds horrible. Especially if I was on the draw, so it already took 2.
Ugh. Then
That
you
point,
might
I
get to
just don't.
dismember an Eidolon.
None of these are good options. I don't really like Dismember in the burn matchup.
You know what? Maybe Reid is onto something with these fatal pushes.
He's going to fetch down to 5 here from 6, and we have an escalated collective brutality. -2/-2 to the Thalia, and I actually imagine he's gaining 2 life here.
I'm a big fan of this line just because Reid understands he's up a million cards.
And this is the worst top deck for him. This is the card he didn't want to see. I mentioned there, that he needed to remove Drogskull Captain, but it's a second Drogskull Captain off the top from Robert. And Reid does not have any sweepers. And I think you see him moving fast here because he knows that he's done.
Yeah, it's time to pack him up.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does. We're on to a third game. A huge captain from Robert Lee.
It's all in the death stare. Pre-game death stares make these things happen.
Whew. you got to put that fear. I'm the kind of I go runner Drogskull Captain. You just got to know.
Oh,
That's happening.
Oh yeah, that's the thing where you got to tell your opponent. Yeah, that's how this matchup usually goes.
Yeah.
This is normal for me. Have you not been here before?
You say, yeah. I mean, there's that. There's the draw of company earlier in the game.
Oh yeah.
That was big.
Oh yeah, Robert. On one hand, it's pretty easy to go, wow, he got lucky that game, but he also drew a lot of lands.
Right.
Right. So sure, he got lucky, but he had to get unlucky in order to need to get lucky. So how lucky did he really get?
I'll take getting lucky against Reid Duke. That seems fine.
I take getting lucky wherever I can get lucky. You don't get to choose these things.
No. I like to just collect a company into both Drogskull Captains.
Ooh, that's
at the same time.
Ooh, that is we call that the Wombo combo.
Yeah, just, by the way, all my creatures are unkillable for the rest of the game.
Oh.
And they're bigger.
Did you put removal spells in your? Oh God, this is so awkward. Well, one of us is gonna have to change. Oh, Judge, these deck lists are locked in.
Locked in. Oh man.
Wow. This must be rough for you. Oh geez. Sorry for your loss, but I had to make it happen. Had to do it to him.
Looking at the Reid's board, it's not like he has a way to get around 2 Drogskull Captains.
Yeah, and that last game was a lot of the reason that you might be considering just bringing in this single Grafdigger's Cage, where if that card is almost like Thoughtseize all of your opponent's collected companies.
If Reid is ahead or close to ahead on the board, he does have the full 4 copies of Liliana of the Veil, so that can answer hexproofing creatures.
Right. The issue is that's kind of assuming a little bit in that if Lee has anything else,
yes,
especially any other spirit, because all of Lee's other spirits in that case would also have hexproof.
Right. The captains would be the last thing he would sacrifice.
Exactly. There, in a lot of matchups in Modern, there are these kind of nightmare scenarios where if the deck gets to do this thing, it is won. The game might not be over, but the game is over, and we're just kind of going through the motions at this point. Bant Spirit's getting 2 copies of Drogskull Captain out against a fair deck when it's at, more than 5 life or something where it can get punked out. Probably going to win those games 99.9% of the time. It's just Reid Duke to kind of avoid those choke points.
We did see those 3 sideboard Thalias, looking at their players' boards, come into play there for Robert. The tempo it gave him, so relevant in that game. It was the turn he had accompanied into Thalia and Spell Queller, because they both show up at the same time, was able to quell the Dark Confidant, and Reid had a land Fatal Push-Up, was never able to use that.
Yeah, it basically let Robert build a 4-mana Time Walk there because he ate Reid's spell and then turned off his next one and got an attack in. It's just real powerful.
Game 3 here. Reid Duke on the play for the first time. Starts on a copy of Shambling Vent. For his white mana here in the deck, 2 copies of Shambling Vent, 1 of each of the Shocklands of Temple Garden and Godless Shrine. That's going to be it for actual white producing lands. Now he has plenty of fetch lands to go find them.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for him to just, he only ever needs a single white source. So even if he gets knocked off them by something, none of the matchups that are blowing up lands are the ones that he needs white for. Maybe he wants Lingering Souls against some of the Field of Ruin blue-white decks, but for the most part, it's there for Stony Silence.
And no 1-drop from Bant is a bit strange to see with so many of them in Robert's deck. You have to think he's kept something pretty powerful.
Yeah, but this is the kind of instance where we're expecting, multiple collected companies. Maybe if you have Thalia Geist Company, you can't throw that back. You're not happy about it, but you can't throw it back.
And we'll see if that's going to be able to keep pace. Reid does have a turn 2 Dark Confidant. I think a card that, on the draw against a 1-drop start is not strong enough here, but on this board looks very good.
Dark Confidant on an empty board that's got to be one of the hallmark plays of Modern, right? Where stuff is either going wrong, but something big is happening whenever you just go, oh, huh. Yeah, Bob is the biggest thing on the table, and also what?
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of Magic about 5 years ago. This was just the best thing you could be doing. It's still a good thing you can be doing.
Wasn't Primeval Titan legal 5 years ago? There's
no
way you thought this was the best thing you could be doing. I don't
Oh,
believe
no,
you.
I mean, it's not that me thinking it's the best thing you could be doing and it's the thing I choose to do are very different statements.
Well, what is best, anyway?
All right.
Are we here? Is this real?
5 years ago, Seething Song was a thing you could be doing, too, which that was something I was pretty into. Path to Exile from Robert, actually going to take care of the Dark Confidant before the untap. Now, I'm a bit surprised to see that in the deck for this matchup, though on this board it's exactly what I'd want.
Yeah, and Robert likely is just kind of thinking he needs to be able to answer these Dark Confidants permanently. Otherwise, he's just not going to be able to keep up in terms of cards. He doesn't really have any other sources of removal spells. So, maybe he's not boarding all of them out or something to that effect, but he's not very excited to draw multiple copies.
Okay.
But the first one is fine.
Does ramp Reid once. We'll see Inquisition of Kozilek and see what Robert's hand is looking like. And we see 2 more copies of Path to Exile. So for a full 3. Then we see Geist of St. Trapped, Spell Queller, and Company. Showing kind of what you mentioned as to why you would keep a hand that's this slow. It's a bit heavy on Path to Exile. I can't imagine the third one plays very often in this matchup.
Yeah, those were likely just some of the draws that he picked up here because the rest of the cards are the reason you keep the hand. The Company, the Queller, the Geist, and the 3 lands. I imagine the keep was those paths, and he's just drawn a couple paths since keeping. But the nice thing about this hand is, 1, Inquisition cannot take Collected Company.
Right.
And then it also can't take away Robert's 3rd turn. So I'd be surprised if Reid had a Liliana of the Veil and didn't play it there.
Yeah, now he still could have a land drop and have Liliana. Remember,
That's
that he has an extra land from Path to
Exile.
That's
right.
Takes the Geist of St. Trapped. That makes sense. Yeah, if it's land, Liliana here would be great. It's not. It's Tarmogoyf and no land drop. So significantly worse here, especially against a hand of all Path to Exiles. These are just lining up in a way that they're, this is going to get pathed.
Yeah, Inquisition of Kozilek and Tarmogoyf. Can you name a more iconic duo?
Oh.
I'll wait. I'll wait. All jokes aside, this hand is actually pretty great for Robert, at least in the direction that it's going. We know that Reid's list is pretty light on Haymakers, so Robert just doesn't have to tap out on his turn for a long time, and Reid has to somehow navigate through a Spell Queller and then a Collected Company on the following turn.
In that basic Plains does Robert, and his path away the Tarmogoyf. Basic land count for Reid is 4, 2 forests, 2 swamps, no problem here.
Looks like that basic land count's about to be 2 in play, 2 in the deck.
So this is an interesting thing. I remember when Golgari midrange first started seeing play here in Modern, it was kind of this Assassin's Trophy, Path to Exile, Field of Ruin style deck. It was really big on making your opponent find basics. Reid actually is pretty much off that. We have 1 copy of Assassin's Trophy and 0 copies of Field of Ruin in the deck.
Yeah, so there's kind of a point where you need the game to go long for those advantages to come online. So when we see things like Arclight Phoenix, like KCI or the Ironworks deck taking over, what do? Field of Ruin, and then they untap and kill you. Field of Ruin, the thing in the ice deck. It's just not realistic.
Well, I think it's interesting because we have a couple players here on the tour who really like that playstyle. You know, I expect to see this out of a Reid Duke Golgari deck. We see a lot of Saul Malka playing straight black-green, and that's more of the Field of Ruin style black-green.
Yeah, and that's one where Saul Malka is going to play how Saul Malka wants to play. He's great. I want to be very clear, this is not me trying to insult him, but he plays the deck very specifically. He's played it for a very long time, and he knows what he wants out of his black-green deck.
English Kozlek went under Spell Queller that turn.
Mike picking up the land that he needed.
And Reid's follow-up was Dark Confidant. Did Robert pick up the land? He did pick up the land for company.
Yeah, that was kind of Reid's hope here, is that maybe Robert draws a couple of his mopier cards in the next couple of turns, so he doesn't have that Queller in the company draw.
And this triple path to exile draw just keeps being rewarding. I think Robert's right now debating between company and path this turn. You know, he can cast company, but it will give Reid a card, whether he's willing to do that.
I'm kind of at the point here where I almost just want to start applying pressure and think there's merit to this company.
When you have 4 lands in a collected company, it's hard to make a different play.
Exactly, and the other cards in Robert's hand look to be Path to Exile, Reflector Mage, and you don't really want to be casting just one of those when you have 4 mana. You want to make good use of all your lands each turn.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, all the plays are pretty good here. You know, each of them is one that if it was the only play, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Oh, exactly. This is definitely sort of the embarrassment of riches, where you know what it is that you want to do. You want to do something that deals with a Stark Confidant or circumvents it, and both of those are pretty good options to have instead of doing, nothing instead.
Wow. Fetch and shock here for Lee. That seems like it's going to be a collected company. And that is the decision he makes. Just too good to pass up, and now we'll see what creatures it brings.
Hope here likely being just to hit a Reflector Mage.
2 captains. I'd take 2 captains.
Would you?
Yeah. It's not the mage, and this is pretty darn close. Drogskull Captain and Supreme Phantom.
I'm glad that you'll make that a sacrifice for us.
Yeah. He swings in for 4 with Spell Queller. Now with a Hexproof Spell Queller. And Reid down to 13. He needs some help quickly.
You can tell by the way that Reid keeps flipping lands with these. They have a good working relationship.
Oof.
Is that a kitchen finks?
No, he that wouldn't even solve it. That'd buy him not even sure that would buy him a turn.
Oh no, I'm just saying you said oof.
Oof.
It's a kitchen finks.
Oh wow. There we go. I'll do that.
Make puns so bad. Your coworkers miss them.
A swing of Dark Confidant. Robert going to block with the 2/4 Supreme Phantom. Reid puts the Confidant away. Interesting. Actually, just one. That was more of a liability? Is that the thought?
Didn't have
he didn't have Revolt. And now, what? Takes care of Drogskull Captain for that Revolt, and now 2 Tarmogoyfs. That block cost Robert a bit there.
Yeah, maybe you should have just gone to 13 as kind of the other thought.
Yeah, this swing now only for 4, Reid to 9. The race is suddenly on Reid's side as the Tarmogoyfs are 4/5s. Now Robert is going to Reflector Mage 1 Goyfin, as both players know has another Path to Exile in his hand.
How do you feel about Reflector Mage and Path versus 2 creatures they can target?
This triple Path to Exile draw on Robert's side, I did not expect to be as good as it ended up being.
Yeah, sometimes the other deck just has the creature draw, and your Swords to Plowshares are great.
Now Reid with some counterplay. Here's one of his 2 copies of Lingering Souls.
And this is going to do exactly what we were talking about before.
Yeah,
it's just going to buy time.
This is great. Get our first Jadine tokens.
Big Jadine fan.
Yeah. I'm glad that they're getting their first play out of a Tarmogoyf deck.
This is just as God intended. This is exactly You know, I wonder if she thought about this.
So maybe that was part of the decision.
What are the tokens we're going to see out of the Tarmogoyf Inquisition decks?
Noble Hierarch from Robert. Reflector Mage attacks. It exalts to a 3/4. Now, Robert actually could have attacked with Spell Queller here.
So, basically, you just don't really want to have it ever anything go wrong, and this is the safest line.
Okay.
And this is also likely a play where Robert wants to, we probably aren't going to see this from Reid, but you just want to give Reid a chance to screw up. And if Reid triple blocks, all of a sudden both of the flyers can attack.
Yeah.
Or quadruple blocks, excuse me.
Robert plays out the rest of the hand. It's a path to exile on the Tarmogoyf. Now he is out of paths. And then the last card, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. That was a powerhouse last game. They'll read on 6 lands right now.
How do you feel about Thalia when you have cast 3 Path to Exiles?
Well, that's why you cast all the paths first.
Oh,
and then you cast the Thalia,
right.
you know?
Okay,
yeah.
Sure. It's
perfectly executed.
Reid has a couple of creature lands hiding out back there.
Yeah.
One of them gains life.
Yeah, he casts Tarmogoyf, and you're right, he has Shambling Vent untapped, does not have the white mana to activate it just yet, and then has a Treetop Village for the turn.
Is this all of Reid's not black or not white sources? It's got to be pushing
All 4
it.
basics. There's some Blooming Marshes that could be hanging out. Or by that I mean a second Blooming Marsh. Swing in the air with Spell Queller is a 4/5. Going to get chump blocked by a Spirit Token, and here's Mausoleum Wanderer. Back to Reduke we go.
All right, so if we draw another Mausoleum Wanderer, with this Thalia, we can probably counter a spell. Probably.
Then again, it has to be a spell that we want to counter. You know, none of this Inquisition or anything.
You don't want to counter Inquisition?
I guess he did do it last game.
I want to counter Inquisition. That card's good.
Yeah, it
Can't
is a
let him
good
resolve
card.
it. Reid put those in his deck for a reason.
Reduke. Both players now playing off the top.
At this point, Reid is just kind of trying to figure out what the games he win look like. Like, how do I actually get from where I am right now to the game where I'm able to claw back into this, and how do I use the cards I have available to do it?
And he's going to go for some damage here, it looks like. Treetop Village is activated. It and Tarmogoyf will attack, so we have a 3/3 trample and a 4/5. There aren't any clean blocks for Robert. If he wants to block, he'd have to trade.
The idea here is sometimes when you're just real far behind on resources and you know you're not going to outgrind your opponent, it becomes your job to try to end the game.
Right.
Obviously by killing the opponent. Naturally, you could concede, but that's probably bad for you most of
right,
the time.
there's ways to end the game. That one is usually not a winning line.
Yeah, exactly. It's not good. But in this particular instance, Reid's just going, all right, I'm down, 5 spells or something to that effect. I have to find a way to navigate this to me winning, and sending in 7 damage here is probably the first step to that.
Well, this is an attack for 7, and it's big enough that Robert, he's going to have to block. Right now, he dealt 4 damage last turn in the air. Trading 4s for 7s isn't going to work out. Now, he has some chump blockers to work with, maybe some trades to work with.
Yeah, here we're probably going to be looking at something to the effect of double blocking the Treetop Village. You could even maybe look into getting real saucy and sending, say, Reflector Mage, Thalia, and Mausoleum Wanderer in front of the Tarmogoyf, but this is a very complex combat step.
Yeah, I like the double block on Treetop Village. That's the line I'm looking at as well here, but using Thalia and Reflector Mage. I don't want to use the flyers. Not yet. And it looks like he's going to go another line. This is actually a pretty good one, too. It was Noble Hierarch in front of Tarmogoyf and taking 3 to go to 8.
I think this one's fine. We don't need the Spell Queller to be a 4/5 in order to get through anymore, now that there are only 3 Lingering Souls tokens.
Right.
Just being a 3/4 instead is going to be good enough.
Both players now with a card in hand. Reid did not play his card last turn.
And the reason that we don't see Robert taking what to us looks like a free double block is if Reid has a Fatal Push or an Abrupt Decay or something to that
It's a big
effect.
deal.
Yeah, he could just get destroyed. Robert could get destroyed, that is.
And big draw from Robert is Reflector Mage. He will reflect the Tarmogoyf back to Reid's hand. Any hope Reid had of racing here feels like it's off the table.
Yeah, this is really, really rough. Reid is down, what, 10 power on the board or something to that effect?
And it just opens up a window for Robert to make a very aggressive swing here.
Exactly. The worst that happens, so theoretically, Robert could attack with everything, and
Fatal
Reid
Push on
has.
Supreme Phantom would be pretty bad.
That'd be really strong. We'd have to see.
Yeah. Looks like Robert's going to swing all the flyers. I wouldn't even mind him throwing Reflector Mage in with this.
I think throwing in a Reflector Mage is great here. It's almost a free attack, and you have one on the back anyway.
Yeah, he's going to hold just all the ground creatures and swing the flyers. Looks like he wants to make sure he has enough back to block that Treetop Village or Shambling Vent if Reid plays a white mana source.
And here, I guess, the thought is if Duke has a removal spell, Reid could go to, say, 2. And
Right.
Robert doesn't know Reid doesn't have a basic Plains. And if he just gets a basic Plains out of his deck, he can send Shambling Vent, Treetop Village, and the 3 tokens for 8.
Well, it was Fatal Push. Reid actually takes care, though, of Spell Queller. And now he triple blocks the Supreme Phantom. Takes 2 off the Wanderer. That was great for Reid. And he goes to 4. This is where I think I wanted to see maybe even a full swing from Robert.
I agree with you. Seeing that extra, almost free damage from Reflector Mage, where getting in with the Treetop Village is kind of a death wish.
Yeah, Liliana the Veil, the draw for Reid. He is at 4. Play -2 means Robert sacrifices a creature. He'll choose Thalia. Reid is making progress, but he's not out of the woods just yet.
No, but this is starting to look good for Reid.
Right, that Treetop Village can block both Reflector Mages.
Exactly, and the tokens block Mausoleum Wanderer.
Now, Robert, his draw turn was Spell Queller, and so I think he has to decide what exactly he wants to do with it. The action's going to be forced anyway due to Liliana, so I think using it as a combat trick for that Wanderer might be his best line.
I completely agree with you. I really like the attack with the Mausoleum Wanderer at the Liliana, because then it forces Reid to attack with one, or block with at least one of these tokens, or lose the Liliana. And you're either getting a Liliana out of this, or 1 spirit or 2 spirits, and those are all pretty good outcomes when you're not under lethal pressure on the way back.
Now, you said to swing at Liliana here. You'd like that more than going upstairs?
I would. So the biggest reason is that's the thing. Getting 1 point, the difference between 3 and 4, when all of your creatures have even powers, is not a huge deal.
Well, if you swing and there's no block, you could pump it to a 2/2.
That's true. That is true. It's just fairly unlikely that Reid doesn't block at all.
Right.
So it kind of comes down to, would you rather pave the way for your other cards to be better and not ever get blocked by these Lingering Souls tokens? Or maybe you want to make sure that this Liliana isn't turning off your flash cards going forward?
I think Robert's contemplating a full swing, which I actually don't hate.
It's effectively sacrificing a Reflector Mage for 2 damage.
Sends a Mausoleum Wanderer upstairs. Reid's going to go for the double block. Robert's going to trick in to play the Spell Queller, so the Wanderer will trade with the last remaining Spirit tokens, and that's going to be the turn Robert passes.
Do what you got to do.
Back to Reid we go. His hand is Tarmogoyf. He's going to draw. Likely wants to play out the hand before using Liliana.
Step 1.
Looking at activating Treetop Village. That will seems likely to trade with a Reflector Mage.
It's hard to say. Liam may just want to keep that Reflector Mage
And try to just win next turn.
kill him. Treetop Village would have to hit 3 times to win here. And we see here that Liam's given either drawn all of his removal or respects the creatures in the deck. So Collected Company, Reflector Mage, any of those cards, another Path to Exile, are going to get this Tarmogoyf out of the way. So having an extra body going at Duke is going to be worth something against that, even against a Tarmogoyf.
There's the Treetop Village swing. We'll see whether Lee wants to take the block or the damage. He's figuring that out himself. 2 threes in play. If 2 of them can connect, that's the remaining 4 points. Reid timing this. I like how starting with this attack is giving Robert the least amount of information to make this call. And he goes for the double block. So Reflector Mage will trade with Treetop Village. Follow-up for Reid is Tarmogoyf. And a land and a plus from Liliana.
White source is what we call
that. Exactly. You're going to say it's not actually terrible here. Now, it's probably a white source on the next turn. For Reid to use Shambling Vent this turn, he has to fetch Shock to 1, which is might be a bit much.
Exactly. And there's even a point where if Robert can't actually kill Reid this turn, he may have to change gears a little bit and go after this Liliana instead, because it's going to eat one of Robert's creatures if he doesn't kill it.
Yeah, it's feeling like Robert may end up just a little short here.
This has been a great game. Let's rewind 5 turns.
Yeah.
We didn't understand how Reid could possibly win.
I want to go back to that last turn where Robert had the option to throw away Reflector Mage for 2 damage. He just got Reid to 2. But wait, here's a card that could help out Robert. His draw for the turn was his one of Moorland Haunt.
Oh.
This is a card that Abzan has a tough time dealing with.
We're going to see Jadines everywhere.
On both players. Reid fetches to 1. But he's going to start getting those life points back. Now, because he's at 1, he has to attack with Shambling Vent this turn.
Exactly. He can't not attack. And in this case, probably going to have to see him sacrifice that Liliana to just get a body off the table.
Well, Emma, hold on. If Reid just went to 1, if he doesn't draw a card, he's actually just dead on board here, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
This makes a 1-1. That's the 3rd power in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He needs to be able to find something that just gets everything out of the way. There may be a...
And here's a swing confirmed. We believe Reid's at 1 after using that fetch land. We'll confirm that because that's a very relevant number.
Oh, you know
and
what
he is.
You know what is different? 1 and 2. Those are not the same.
Yeah, just worlds apart.
I've had fingers to help me figure that one out. 2 of them, sometimes 1 of them.
Swing from Reid is for 6. It's not lethal. Reflector Mage in front of Shambling Vent. Reid hoping to maybe get an incorrect block, but Robert's not going to do that for him. And leaves it there. He already made the Spirit token.
Yeah, I do not love the Sorcery Speed Spirit token, but for the most part, if Reid had Sorcery Speed removal, it would be pointed at the Queller anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it actually matters. Right, so now -2, and Robert sacrifices the Reflector Mage. Reid says go. Here's at 3. 3 in the air. Robert going to turn him sideways. Mausoleum Wanderer first there to protect from a spell and a swing, and Reid extends the hand. It is Robert Lee picking up the win here in 3.